So in I want to say 93. Yeah, 1993. I was touring with the Second City Chicago. I've told this story before, but it makes sense to tell it again in this context. I was touring with Second City, and we had a gig, I forget where, and it was like a beautiful, like, February night, and we had come back from the gig, and it was a local tour co-gig. We weren't traveling someplace else in the country. We were going to like a local college or something to do a show. And so you have all your stuff for the show. I mean, I had my suit in my little garment bag, and I had a suitcase filled with wigs and glasses and all the accoutrements that accompany being a sketch comedy performer. At the time, I was courting our stage manager, and she was a lovely person, and I was all of the age. I think it was in '93. I was 24 years old, 23, 24 years old. I'll say 24. And I was courting this stage manager. We had a budding romance that was just beginning. And it was in those early kind of circling each other. And it's that fun youth of beginning of a relationship. And so we had come back from the gig, and it's now like 2:00 in the morning. And I lived in kind of in the Belmont district area, kind of between Belmont and, if you know Chicago, Belmont and Diversey, that chunk of space in Chicago. So 2:00 in the morning, she at the time was living way on the north side, and so she wasn't going to take a cab all the way to the north side because it would have been too expensive. So she's like, you know what? I'll let's take a cab that splits the difference in the space where we live, and I'll hop on the train, and then you can go on from there. I said, great. So we take the cab. We get off at the Belmont L stop. We get out of the car. I think this might have been our first kiss. And so we had this lovely romantic kiss, downy flake snow, street lights. It was a Hopper painting. And we're underneath the train going overhead. And, you know, we're up against the wall saying our goodnight kisses. And it was wonderful. And I still taste her as I was letting her go, say goodbye and watching her leave and walk up the stairs. And I have my bag, and I have my garment bag over my shoulder, and I have my suitcase in my hand, and I just was on top of the world. I mean, I just was filled with just elation and light and hormones and all of the things that happen when you've kissed a pretty girl underneath an L stop at 2:00 in the morning. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm walking home. I'm going to walk home. I live maybe 4 blocks from here. I live about half a mile from here. So it's a beautiful night. There's some cars. I'm going to walk home. So I head down the street, and I can just see the light from the street lights and the big downy flake snow. And I walk down Belmont, and I take a right onto Clark Street, and I'm walking up Clark Street, and my mind is still swimming with the thoughts of her and just what we just enjoyed each other, and it was very innocent and youthful, and it was beautiful. And I'm walking, I'm lost in thought, and I'm like, I'm 6'2". I'm a big dude. I'm like, I put this in the best possible terms. I'm a big white dude, and so I'm fortunate in this world to have not been made afraid of much. Mm. I've been gifted with privilege, and the thing about privilege is you are not aware when you have it. So I've never had to clutch car keys walking through a parking garage. I've been gifted that by genetics and the roll of the dice to whom I was born and how I was born. I was not born in a world that asked me to fear it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So with that privilege, I was like, I'm walking home at 2:00 in the morning. I don't bat an eye. As opposed to so many other people in this world would go, you don't do that. Based on gender, based on race, based on 100 other things that would make you go, don't do that. I did it. So I'm walking home, and I'm walking down Clark Street. Get 2:00 in the morning, not a lot of traffic. Street lights are on. Big, gloppy, downy flakes. I was in a snow globe, and it was gorgeous. It wasn't terribly cold, because when the flakes are that big, it's not that cold. So it was perfect. And I'm walking, and I hit this corner, and this guy comes around the corner, and he passes me. And then he turns and keeps pace with me. Another guy, seconds later, comes around the corner, and he turns and keeps, now they flanked me.
Oh my God.
And I'm just curious. I'm like, and I turn, and that's when the one guy opens his jacket to show me his gun. And then he goes, come with us.
What?
I'm like, oh, okay. So he takes me off the main strip of Clark Street, or they take me off the main strip of Clark Street around the corner. And the best way that I describe this is if you took your hands and put them in front of your ears, and it sounds like your voice is not yours.
Yeah.
Like you're hearing your own voice from far away, and anybody who has suffered an attack or trauma has probably experienced this. And I'm looking at the guy, and the guy is pointing a gun at my head. And then there's a guy behind me. And so you just start babbling for your life. I go, well, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want? He goes, give me the bags. And I drop the bag, drop the other bag. And I was still there. And they hadn't done anything. I go, anything else? I asked, like, can I help you? And he goes, now the wallet. Like, okay. Took my wallet out, handed it to him. The other guy grabs the bags, and they still hadn't let me go. And I go, now what? And I can see my apartment building. I'm home.
Oh
And I go, what else? And he goes, now run, motherfucker. So my brain is going, tick, 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 tick. If I run towards my apartment building, I have to put my back to them.
Right.
They grab the bags, and they go that way up the side street. So they're now running away from me, as my legs have never, well, what other time in my life have my legs took out from under me? Just fight or flight. And I wasn't going to fight. And so it was like a pachoo! And I ran back to my apartment building, and I woke up my roommate, and I was just like, I'm now all adrenaline. And I'm like, and it was one of those things that my first thought was, call her to see if she got home okay.
Oh, wow.
Because the world was dangerous. And like, my brain was like, we're at war. Like, make sure everybody's okay. Because if it happened to me, it probably happened to her. Like, obviously not. But my first thought was, call her to make sure she got home okay. Because I was fine. She was nowhere near this. She was heading on the L train north 15, 20 minutes ago. So I was there, and I got in my door, and I panicked, but it was the first time in my life that I was aware of my life a second at a time. I'm alive now. He hasn't pulled the trigger. 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 I'm still alive. 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 And it was a random mugging. It was just a random mugging. And I also recognize soldiers face guns every day. People face violence in other parts of the city every day. My middle-class white boy from the suburbs who'd never been punched in the face. I just have found a way to avoid violence in my life. I was a small kid, smart-ass, funny boy, so I was always a way I could soft shoot my way out of any altercation. I've never been hurt. I've never been hurt by another human being, really. And these guys really never touched me, but the threat of violence was huge, and there was two of them, and the gun looked so heavy. It was just like heavy metal, and I go, literally, this much space is what stood between me and death, which was this to this, this to this, was the amount of space that stood between me and a random act of violence. And, through the lens of years, I go, these guys are as terrified as I was to do something like that. What circumstances must they have been in that leads them to hold people up in the middle of the street at 2 o'clock in the morning? And then the irony being, they opened that bag and they got wigs and glasses. It's like I hope it was worth it, guys, because they got a secondhand suit and some wigs and glasses, and then what the amount of the big payday that was a Turco actor's salary in that wallet at the time. They had my MTA card, my driver's license, my ATM card, and maybe $25 in cash. I mean, it was not a big haul. But yeah, that was I suddenly got a glimpse into a different way the world operates that I had seen in movies and television and literature and on the news. And now I was a statistic of armed violence, but I wasn't a victim. I didn't get shot, but the threat was there and the experience was there. And I was young. I was 24 years old. That's 2 years older than my son.